All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Saturday session of our Parent Empowerment Conference. I am Marcy Torshin. I am with the Family Support Center with PGCPS. And this morning we're welcoming Dr. Amanda Schwartz. Amanda has supported families of young children with disabilities as a teacher, consultant, and researcher and trainer for over 25 years. Amanda's work focuses on supporting children with disabilities to access high-quality services from education, health, and community organizations. She's an advocate for individuals with disabilities, and as an advocate, family engagement and inclusion are central to her work. She has authored training and materials for early intervention, preschool special education, Head Start, childcare, family childcare, and home visitors. Her work focuses on building strong relationships between families and professionals in order to promote information sharing, planning, and problem solving. So welcome, Dr. Schwartz, and we will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So I am going to share my screen and show you our slides for today. I'm going to put them on. I'm a little clumsy with the slides translation thing, but we'll roll with it, right? So today's session is called Finding the Promise in Children's Behaviors, What You Can Learn from Your Child, because I really like to think about behavior as a puzzle. We're trying to understand what's going on in our children's lives, and we are trying to figure out how to make that meaningful in a way that we can respond to and support them as they're growing and changing. So let's get started. So today, you're talking to me. You heard a little bit about me. The part you didn't hear is that I'm the mother of two children. This is them when they're younger. I am a single parent. And I live with my mother, as you see her on the bottom. She is 86 and has Parkinson's. So we all live together and we take care of each other in our nice little world, our nice little bubble. We are breaking out of it a little bit because the COVID restrictions are opening up our lives a bit. But we're very lucky. We live in a wonderful neighborhood with lots of community supports. And that was by design. So it takes a village to raise a child. And we'll talk about that in the next session you'll see with me. But just a little bit about me. They are home today, everybody, including the dog. So hopefully we won't have too many interruptions. But they're older now. They're able to entertain themselves. I'm sure you all can relate. Okay, so our agenda for today. So we're going to have a little bit of introductions. Then we're going to talk about what is behavior. We're going to talk about what do we expect versus what we get. We're going to think about how do we think and respond in the moment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to become a child behavior detective and coach. Because we're a small group, I'm hoping that we can take our mics off and talk to each other a little bit. There's a lot of information that we're going to be talking about today, and it would be great to engage with each other about it. I have a bunch of polls and chats, some movies to share. So I would love to get you engaged in the conversation. And I do have my chat up so that we can use that if you feel more comfortable using the chat. I believe in different ways, universal design for learning. So I know that there are different ways that people take information in, and I know there are different ways that we express what we know. So please do what feels comfortable for you. So let's do who is in the Zoom room. And we can do this either verbally or we can do it in the chat. You pick what you want, how you want to introduce yourself to the group. But I'm looking for my mouse. If you can tell me your name and then your child's toy that best a child's toy that best describes your child. You'll see here on the slide, I used a disco ball for my daughter. She loves to dance. And I used a basketball for my son because that's all he ever wants to do is play basketball. So if you can either come off of mute or put in the chat what your name is and what toy best describes your child, that would be great. So I see a couple people in the Zoom room. You choose. If you'd come off of mute, I can see you and I'll call you. But if you'd rather use the chat, that's fine.
I'll come off of mute.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Christina Herent, and my son is 3-year-old. You hear my 7-month-old in the background, but my son is 3. And the toy that best describes him would be a train. He loves trains. He loves going in circles. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. My son, when he was 3, was obsessed with Thomas the Train. So I get it. It's a thing. Anybody else? Okay, so that's fine. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit more later. I like to know who I'm talking to. So sometimes I may poke you a little bit for some interaction. Okay, so I am going to do a poll right now. I want to know, why did you join today's session? Is it because you struggle with your child's behaviors? You wanted to learn more about your child's development? You're curious about what child behaviors mean, or you're interested in learning as much as you can as a parent, or something else, just completely different. And if you choose other, if you can put it in the chat, that would be great. And I see that Yvette wrote down that she is staff. So she joined today as a staff person. Hi, how are you? I've met you before. I see you. Okay, so if you can answer the chat, the quiz, that would be great, the polls. I don't see any responses yet. Oh, I see one. Learning as much as you can as a parent, that's great. And then anything else? Okay, so that's great. I think we are all here to learn and to grow as people, right? So here are the chat results. We have a small audience today, so that result makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about our first topic. Oh, before we do that, let's just be clear that parenting can make you feel vulnerable. And so this is a safe place to start exploring what that means. Also knowing that finding a way to feel safe in recognizing and addressing your feelings can help you understand and address your child's feelings. So this is about relationships. Everything is about relationships, but this in particular is about relationships. And so you're part of the equation. You know that as parents, we are part of the equation in how our child is growing and learning. And so we have to understand ourselves and do some self-exploration in order to really meet our children's needs in a way that works for them and that works for us. So that's just a reminder as we're talking today about behavior, which can be a very sensitive subject, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's a way of understanding where you sit in this broader hardness of dealing with behavior. Okay. So let's see. Every time I press the button, it wants to beep at me. So what is behavior? So if you can either come off mute or write in the chat what you think behavior is, that would be great. So tell me, what do you think behavior is? I don't see any responses yet, so I'm just going to be patient for one more second, see if anybody has a response. So as you're thinking about what behavior is, I want you to think about circumstances of what would you've experienced with your children, temper tantrums, giggles and smiles, everything that composes behavior. And so think about what that behavior is and why it's happening, right? And so one of the things that we talk about when we're working with educators and parents and administrators, anybody who encounters different kinds of behaviors, is that behavior is communication. It's a way that we tell the world what we're thinking, what our needs are, all of those kinds of things. Behavior is the body's way of expressing what we're thinking, what we need, and what our emotions are. And so if you start from that understanding that behavior is actually a way of expressing yourself, it helps you relate to other people. So for children, and you'll see Joe here is crying. He was a newborn. Even when they're the youngest ages, when they have no words, behavior is the way that they communicate. So they may communicate with words and sentences when they're older. They may use pointing or eye gaze. They may pull an adult. They may cry. They may bite. And they may tantrum. And know that kids with disabilities do all these things in different ways. You may not experience pointing and eye gaze in certain kids, but you may have them pull on you or cry or bite or tantrum. These are all ways of saying to you, I need something or I feel something, right? And so what are they communicating? They may be communicating specific requests. They may want to get away from a specific demand or activity or a person. They may be asking for help or social interaction. They may be just simply making a comment about the environment that they're in. I have a soon-to-be teenager, and he'll turn his back or roll his eyes, and that's a comment right there. So they may be asking for sensory stimulation like a hug, or they may be trying to get away from it because it may be too much. This picture here you see is my daughter, who was having a temper tantrum for about a half an hour before this picture. And the reason she's smiling in this picture is because she just wanted to wear that skirt. That's all she wanted. But she had no way of saying to me, or really knowing that was the one thing that would make her happy in the moment. And she just had a blowout. And then when we got that skirt on her, when we figured out that was what she wanted, everything calmed down. So sometimes it's just simply an inability to express things in any other way than just to release it. So I want to talk a little bit about temperament, because temperament is the way we approach and react to the world. So it is who we are underneath all of it. And there are 3 basic temperament styles that have been defined. There's the easygoing person, the person who just sort of goes with the flow. Don't we all wish that everybody around us was that person sometimes? Then we have the person who's slow to warm, and that is somebody who's sort of shy and reserved at first, but then sort of gets into it and is willing to engage with the rest of the world. And then we have those high energy kids, those kids that are just sort of exploding around us. And they are the ones that we're always trying to sort of help figure out how to manage the energy so that they can communicate it in positive ways. And so temperament, while it has these basic 3 styles, also there are these traits within each. And there are 9 of them, And we all range, we all have temperament, and we all range on each of these traits. So for example, activity level is the amount, the energy level or amount of movement that a person has. And so the range is from energetic to sedentary. Active children prefer to be in motion and have difficulty sitting. Sedentary children are sort of, they will prefer the quiet sedentary activities, and they may be slow to move. So if your kid is at home running around all the time, they're that high level of energy, that is, they're energetic. But if they are kids that maybe slower, move slower, do things slower, they're on the sedentary end. Then we have regularity. Those are natural patterns and schedules for biological functions. So sleeping, going to the bathroom, eating. There are kids who are very predictable and do things sort of on a routine or schedule all of the time. And then there are kids that are sort of all over the map with their schedules and prefer irregular eating and sleeping patterns, and have a difficulty conforming to any kind of schedule or routine. There are kids that then there's initial reaction, and that is about reaction to new people and situations. So there are some kids that are totally open and excited to meet lots of new people and engage with lots of new people. And there are kids that are hesitant and shy and may hide behind mom or dad because a new situation is scary to them. I know a child who, anytime a new situation arises, it increases the level of anxiety so much that their temper tantrums that last very long periods of time. In fact, going to a chain restaurant in a different location that they've never been to before can create so much anxiety that they will refuse to go and cannot function. So they have to go back to the exact same McDonald's every single time. And that is just part of their temperament. That's just part of who they are. Then there's adaptability, and that's about how they manage transition or changes. So moving from one activity to another can be, a child can be very accommodating and have no trouble with that, versus resistant, which means I want to do this activity as long as I can possibly do this activity, and I'm not really interested in shifting. It's too hard to shift. Okay, then intensity is about your emotional response to events. So you may be very excited when something happens, or you may be lethargic, less excited, less able to show any kind of energy about something that you're excited about. So, you know, there will be kids that are just incredibly engaged and they're jumping off the walls because they're excited about something. And then there are kids, you present them with something you think they'll be excited about, like a cupcake or a toy that you think they'll really like, and they won't react with a lot of excitement. This can be really important. You'll adapt as a parent to these kinds of responses, but this can be important when grandparents come and give the child a toy, and the grandparent doesn't get the kind of reaction, or gets such an excited reaction, they don't know how to respond. And so helping others understand this intensity is important. And then there's mood. So some people come into the world with the glass half full, and some come with that glass half empty. And so your kid may be a kid who's always telling you everything that's right in the world, everything that's good. And you might have a kid that tells you everything that's wrong and can find mistake in everything. Then there's distractibility or ability to focus. So you may have a kid who's hyper attentive, who's able to focus on things for long, long, long periods of time. And then you may have a kid who gets sidetracked easily, who is very distractible. I have one of each, and it presents an issue when you have two kids that are very different in the same room. I'm sure you've experienced this. It can be really hard to manage different temperaments in the same place. Persistence is our second to last one, and that's the ability to stick with an activity that is difficult. I do a lot of trainings in school readiness, and I say persistence is one of those great skills for school, but not so great for home. So if you have a kid who's immersed in persistence, they will stick at an activity forever and ever and ever. Or if they want something, they will poke at you until they get it. It's the mom, 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 until they get what they want. Then there are kids that aren't as persistent, that will become disinterested easily. They may have a short attention span, or they may have trouble thinking about multi-step directions. Yvette, thank you. I'm glad that I was able to sort of refocus. So in school, you want them to be able to have that sort of immersed experience, but it also be able to transition. But being able to stick with a lesson or an activity is really important. And so persistence is a really positive quality in the long term. And when they get out in the work world, persistence and being able to stick with a task is really critical. And then the last one is about sensory thresholds. And that's the reaction to sensory stimuli: texture, touch, brightness, volume, taste, and aroma. And yes, and it can be a challenge at home. So there are kids that any noise is an issue. And there are kids that you could walk past a train that is very loud and making lots of rumbling noises and throwing sticks out at you, and they would be totally unperturbed by it. I also have one of each of those. One of my children didn't like reading books. We had to switch to a digital reader and an Audible, because touching pages was after a bath. Your skin is sensitive after being in water for a long time. So touching pages after a bath was tactily too overwhelming. So we had to switch to a different kind of reading or audible device. So I tell you all of these different traits because I think that you'll find your child is going to be somewhere on the range of all of them. And understanding where they are is part of understanding what their behaviors mean, where they're coming from, and why they're reacting the way that they're reacting to different kinds of situations. I also want to share with you that they've done a lot of research about what emotions feel like in our body. So emotions are not just in our head. We have biochemical reactions to the way that we feel. They did studies with MRIs where they measured different activations to understand how the body feels when you're having specific emotions. And you see, this is just the basics of how it was conducted. If you look, it's pretty interesting how our bodies react to different emotions. You'll see that happiness fills the entire body with this warmth, with this sort of excitement, right? Anger and love and pride also fill the body with lots of energy. Anxiety too. You'll see it. It's in different parts of our body though. While happiness is a general overall body feeling, anger is really, if you look at it, from the heart and up. Love, it goes a little further down. Pride is really in that same area as anger, but doesn't really get into the arms. And anxiety and pride have some relationship there too. Depression really stands out, and sadness really stand out for the cold temperatures that you'll see in them. So I always like to say, I think surprise has less of the heat because it's quick. Surprise does not last as long. And contempt is interesting too, that it's mostly in your head. It's not as deep as anger, contempt and envy. But these are interesting because one of the things that I talk to my kids about and that I teach teachers and parents to talk to their children about is how it feels when you feel certain emotions in your body. Because if you can sense an emotion coming physically in your body, you can take some steps to calm yourself down and handle those emotions in a different way. And so here's how I like to talk about handling those emotions in a different way. Dan Siegel came up with this model, hand-brain model. And we're going to watch a little video about it in a second, but this is a great way of teaching other people about how to manage emotions, because it is all biological, it's all in your brain. And if you can get your brain to calm down, you can handle different situations. As your children get older and understand their bodies a little bit more, you'll be able to have more of these conversations about understanding themselves and how they feel and managing those emotions. So let's watch the video because she does a better job of explaining it than I do. And I'm going to shuffle really quickly to the video and let you see it. Okay.
Hold your hand up like this, fold your thumb in, close your fingers down. This is a model of your brain. So the eyes, if there's a head here.
Oops.
Do you love Gantt charts?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here's how easily you can build
I
one.
apologize.
Here, they'd be looking out the front this way. This is the outside of that brain, that wrinkly part you see when you see a brain. And at the very front, right behind your forehead here, the smart part, the prefrontal cortex. It makes the decisions. Now, inside, you can't see it, but we're going to open it up like this, and we're going to see the thumb area and down here in the palm. These two areas work together. The limbic system, the emotions, the feelings part, when you feel scared, when you're really angry, when you're out of control and you're upset, you can't think straight. And here, the brainstem keeps your heart beating and your lungs breathing, and it makes you move your hand away from a hot stove really quickly. These two areas working together saves your life from a tiger. It sends out a warning signal, danger, danger, and our heart beats. We breathe fast and shallow. Our muscles tense so that we can run or we can fight and save our lives, which is very handy if a tiger is chasing you. Not so handy if you're sitting in a classroom. Now, what happens? The alarm will go off, and they're false alarms. You know, false alarms in the school when the fire alarm goes off and there was no fire and we all have to leave the building anyway. Well, that's what happens here. Somebody might criticize you, or your teacher tells you to sit down and please do your work, and you get all upset. That's not a real alarm. You're not really in danger. Yet the alarm is set and you flip your lid. You lose the smart part. And this part is now in control. What can you do to get this smart part back? Start breathing slow, in through your nose, out through your nose, way down into your belly. Let your shoulders go. Relax, relax. Relax your body and breathe. This will trick this part. Look what's happening. The smart part. You get your smart part back, because whatever got you upset most of the time is a false alarm.
Okay, so you can see why I like that video so much, and somebody did ask for it. So I am going to put it in the chat right now for everybody. And so this one was designed for kids, and you're not going to probably use it with your kiddos, but I would say that the strategies that it teaches, I'm trying to get my PowerPoint back up. The strategies that it teaches are still strategies you can use with your children. So you knowing this, you understanding how the brain works, you can find a way to sort of work with your child to take those deep breaths and to work through the moment. So let's talk a little bit about when those moments happen, right? So what we want, what social emotional skills do we want children to have? What do they need to be successful in school and in life? This is from the Center for Social Emotional Foundations of Early Learning. And they talk about the importance of confidence, of knowing yourself and being prepared for the world, the capacity to develop good relationships with peers and adults. We want them to get along with each other. We want them to get along with their teachers. We want them to get along with all of us. We want them to be able to concentrate. We want them to be able to persist. We want them to have the ability to effectively communicate their emotions. We want them to be able to talk about how they feel. It doesn't have to be verbal communication. They can use symbols. They can use gestures. They just have to have a way to express themselves that feels comfortable for them. We also want them to be able to listen to instructions and be attentive. A lot of school is listening and following directions, right? So we want them to be able to do that. And we want them to be able to solve social problems, because when they're out in the world with other kids, they need to be able to respond to those other kids. We want them to be able to build friendships. And those are all traits that are important parts of friendships and relationships. And the world is built on friendships and relationships with the people around us. So those are important skills. As I say, some of these skills have a back end for us as parents that are really hard. So when our kids are out in social situations where they're working hard at trying to get along with others, they come home to their safe place, and that's where the release happens. And that's what you're seeing. You know that. They're working so hard in the other environment, which is not necessarily their comfortable place, that when they come back home, they struggle to sort of keep it together. You're the safe place where everything releases. So I wonder if anybody is willing to share an instance when their child showed one of these behaviors, and what it looked like for you when you saw your child do this. So, for example, my children, when they were very little, we did a lot of language. So my daughter was in early intervention when she was a toddler. She had oral motor issues. She was socially very advanced, but she had significant speech language kinds of issues. And both of my kids are low tone. So they were spaghetti, they were always falling all over people. If they were in a social setting, they were on top of people. And that created a lot of problems for other kids with my kids or with other adults wondering why my children were draped all over the place. And my daughter in particular wasn't always able to express herself in ways that made sense. She was drooly, she was cute, but all of that. So when they were little, we found ways that felt safe for them to communicate their emotions. And so we'd use stuffed animals, or we would use pictures, or we would use whatever we could find to help them sort of communicate their needs and wants, so that to other people in ways that felt good, so that we weren't dealing with lots of temper tantrums or arguments with other children. And it was not easy. It was a lot of trial and error, but we got there. So I'm wondering, do you guys have any examples of ways that your children worked on some of these behaviors and worked through some of that you'd like to share? Okay, so I know that we don't have a lot of people in the room, so I'm just going to keep going. And if you want to talk or share, feel free to either raise your hand or put something in the chat, because I am watching the chat. So let's keep going. And I just wanted to share with you Maryland Early Learning Standards. So these are the learning standards for all children in the state of Maryland. And this is just one component of it. So one of the standards is about demonstrating healthy self-confidence, one of those criteria we just talked about. So at a year, children are starting to have some self-control. We've seen that in our babies. They may not have it all together, but they are trying to begin to have some self-control over their bodies, over their expressive abilities, over the way that they are in the world. At 2 years, they should be showing some increasing ability to control themselves, and they should start playing around alongside other children. Notice my shoulds. Not every child is going to do this. We work on a continuum, and children with disabilities do things in the way that works for them when they're ready. And one of the things I try to teach all teachers and to sort of remind parents is that there's a broad continuum of development, and everybody's going to do things at their own pace. And it is our job as adults in their lives and caregivers is to meet them where they are. So at 3 years, they may begin to have independence in their routines and tasks. They may be able to start making decisions about what they want to do and how they want to do it. At 4 years, they continue to become more independent in routines and tasks and continue to make those decisions. In kindergarten, they start having to manage routines and tasks and transitions between those routines and tasks. And they're asked to do that independently. And that is challenging for them. If they haven't been in school before then, they've never come across that experience. If they had preschool, they were given a lot of support in making those transitions. So the bump from 4 to 5 can be very challenging for kids. They also are expected to begin to solve problems independently. And that is also really challenging when you've had a lot of support, or you may not be able to do those problem solving kinds of things. In grade 1, they're expected to manage the daily schedule and know how to make good choices and decisions. And in grade 2, they should be able to manage that daily schedule and determine the choices available and make those decisions independently. Now, this is what Maryland's expectations are. I want to show you Milestones Matters, which is a lot broader and includes a lot more domains than just social emotional. So let's pop over to Milestone Matters. This is from the CDC. You may or may not have seen it. But it has the expectation of milestones for all ages. So, so you can poke through and you'll see what they expect babies to do by this age. Now, these are all expectations of typical development that not everybody is doing, right? So let me bring up the PowerPoint again. So when looking at the developmental milestones, you think, does this match what I expect for my kid? Do you think that your child should be behaving differently than the milestones say? And do you think the milestones are fair? So let's poke into these milestones again. And let's look at, let's pick something in the middle. Let's do 30 months. So for social emotional skills at 30 months, they say they expect children to be able to show you what they can do by saying, look at me. Lots of kids are not doing that. They're not saying, look at me, especially if they have a disability. They're asking for your attention in different ways, though, and they're asking for your praise and your interaction in different ways. And so they're going to be, those milestones are going to look different in every child. There is no one way of doing things, right? We know this. So I like to say the development is a winding path that we each walk in slightly different ways. Some people walk like a pretty normal winding road. Some people take the straight and direct path. And some, they make progress, then they regress a little bit, then they make progress, then they regress a little bit, then they make progress and regress. That's normal. And it's okay to do things differently. We can't expect everybody to do things the same way. It's just not the way the world works, right? And with kids with disability, we will see them in very different ways within development all along the milestones. Often they'll make progress in one area and they'll get stuck in another. So while they may be making progress in motor skills, you may hear them talk less or make less verbalizations because they're focusing so much on that motor development that they're not doing anything else. That's just what they want to focus on. They may be chatting and chatting and chatting and not moving a lot. And so, and when I say chat, I mean babble, I mean vocalize, I mean whatever it is, however they express themselves, that may take away from their development in other ways. They may plateau or regress in other areas because they're focusing so much on specific skills. You may not see it evenly. So as I mentioned, it's our job as their nurturing, loving, caregiving adults to follow their lead as they move along the path. The other thing I would say about milestones is be careful with them. You know, milestones are not the same for parents of children with disabilities as they are for children without disabilities, and even some children without disabilities don't follow the milestones per se. We are a black and white world in which we like to have concrete information. And so we create rules and routines and structures that help us understand that. They help us understand where we've been and where we get to. But your child may be all over the map with the milestones, and that's okay. That's part of their developmental path. So know that there are pros and cons to milestones, and they may not work for you all the time. And you just have to be comfortable with that. It's just the way the world is. So I just wanted to share this video and see maybe you can relate to this mom. So let me show you the video.
Blake is a very smart, outgoing, chatty little guy, and I have a hard time just keeping up with him. He talks a lot, wants to do a lot, is always going, always moving. And taking him to the grocery store is a big challenge. Our problems aren't so different from any other family when we go to the grocery store, except that I have Parkinson's and Blake has cerebral palsy. So when we go to the grocery store, Blake would pull things off the shelf, put them into the cart, throw things down on the ground. I'd have to pick them up. That was a little game with him. He would beg. He would rip open bags of cookies. And this made it so tough on me, so that by the end of our shopping trip, we were both exhausted. And that's all we had the energy to do for the entire day.
So I don't know, maybe you've had a similar experience in your life where you've tried to do something that seemed like a normal routine in your life before you had kids. And then you had a kid, maybe a kid with a disability that changed the way you do everything. Everything became challenging. And the behaviors that your child exhibited made no sense in your adult brain. And you just said, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? This is not what I expected. This is the opposite of what I expected. How am I going to handle this? So you may be hoping for this angelic child, or if you have more than one, their relationship is perfect. Everything is great. They get along wonderfully. Everything is perfect, except it's not. They fight, they argue, they make your life more challenging. They physically get on top of each other. And when they're supposed to be hugging, they're wrestling. And then they're having a temper tantrum and crying and sad because they can't organize themselves to manage. And your expectation of what was to be is sort of drown in tears because you want to cry too, because it just didn't work out the way you hoped it would. So you're going to see a wide range of emotions in your child. You're going to see happy, you're going to see sad, you're going to see frustrated. These are all parts of life, right? We have these multiple behaviors that we have to deal with in our kids. And so how do we think and how do we respond in the moment? Let's think about that. So what if this was your child and they were playing ball in the house, even though you told them not to, and they broke the vase that your great grandmother brought over from wherever, and it was a family heirloom. And of course, the first thing you're thinking is, how come this happened? This is terrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. You have that, remember we talked about how the physical emotions, you feel them in your body and your whole body is just feeling heat and upset, right? So what do? You take a deep breath, you calm down, you say, we talked about not using the ball in the house. We aren't going to be okay with this. What are we going to do? How are we going to respond? And you do all of this calmly because you're always calm as a parent. You never get upset, especially during the pandemic, when you were all in the house together for so many hours without any support. I'm sorry, the dog is trying to get in. I told you, I am a parent too. I have a family, and so sorry for the distraction. But so what are you going to do in those situations? Well, it is so natural to just want to go boom and explode. But really, the best thing to do is to step back, and take a little time to calm down. Remember, we talked in the morning, in the beginning, about vulnerability. Well, having that vulnerability to know that I'm going to explode if you do something that upsets me, and that I, as a parent, am not really supposed to explode. I'm supposed to stay calm so that my child will stay calm. So what I am going to do is I'm going to walk into another room. I'm going to say to you, after you broke something, I need a minute. I'm going to just take a second. I know with infants and toddlers, you can't walk out of the room. You just have to sort of look at them, take a deep breath, and hope for the best, right? So you're going to do that. Find your Zen inside yourself so that you can respond to the situation. And remember the FIST model. This applies to you too. You're going to go like this. And so taking those deep breaths can help you come back to this state where you can be calm in the moment and respond to your child. And remember, relationships are everything. Your child's relationship to you is how they relate to the world. And so finding a way to keep those positive, nurturing relationships, even in those heated moments when your child is doing exactly the opposite of what you hope they would do, is really critical. So all of this is based on this notion of attachment. Ron Lally talked a lot about attachment in his research and how important it is to growing good, strong, successful people. So attachment starts in pregnancy and it's biologically driven. It forms in part when the adult and the child interact with each other. And it's how we describe the relationship between a child and the significant adults in their lives. Now, having said that, attachment does not happen automatically for all people. I have spoken to a lot of parents who said, when my child was born, I expected, because I saw it in the movies, that I would look at my baby and I would just feel this warmth all over and we would just be one unit and it would just all work. Well, that's not everybody's reality. Honestly, there are a lot of families who do not attach right away or do not feel attached at different periods of life. It is just not a universal truth. There are no universal truths. And so while attachment is a critical, important part, it is not always easy. And so there are going to be times when you don't feel as connected as you would like to your children. And that's okay. You just have to sort of work through it, I think, and find a way to build those relationships and build that nurturing. Maternal depression is real and paternal depression is real. And so if that may be a concern, getting help is really important, particularly if you're dealing with the stressors of being a parent of a child with a disability. It's hard. It is hard for everyone. And so you need as much support as they do. So one of the tools that we refer to a lot when we talk about this attachment idea is this notion that temperament is going to be different sometimes for the child and the parent. And so there are different tools that you can use to see how your temperament and your child's temperament match. Now, the infant toddler temperament tool, and I'll show you that right now, is a tool that was developed by the Center for Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. And if you poke into the tool, it asks you questions about yourself and your infant or toddler. And when you rate yourself and you rate them, you end up getting a report that has, and I'll just do it really quick so you can see, I'll put myself the same and different in different areas, but it's a way for you to sort of gauge how your parenting matches the needs of your child. And so you can use it I think it comes with strategies. I just want to show you, get your results. So it provides you with some tips of how you can interact with your child when your styles, your temperament is different. It's a really nice way to start thinking about building that attachment, building that relationship between you and your child if you're different. This other resource, the temperament, what is it, tool, it doesn't do the same thing comparing you and your child, but it allows you to start gauging where you are and to think about different things you can do to respond to your child's temperament. So there are lots of tips in here that you can use. And so I wanted you to have those two resources, because when attachment isn't easy for you because you're going through other things in your life or it just hasn't clicked, there are ways that you can support your child and build that nurturing relationship. Okay, so let's listen to Dr. Markham, who talks about the ways that you can build a positive parent and child relationship. So let's just, she's going to talk to us for a little while. She has some really great tips. I always like sharing videos of experts talking about some good ideas. So let's listen.
I'm going to actually start with the second idea. The second idea is connection. And I'm starting with that because that is 80 or 90% of parenting. Because until we have a relationship with someone where they trust us and they want to follow our guidance and our lead, they won't do what we say. That's true for adults and it's true for children. So if you want your child to cooperate without threats and punishment or bribes or yelling at them, if you want your child to cooperate, you need a relationship of closeness, of trust, where your child wants to do what you say, wants to follow your lead, doesn't want to disappoint you because they love you and they're close to you. So that's connection. And it is, as I say, maybe guidance and teaching your child is 20% of parenting at most. 80% of it is that warm connection with your child where you delight in who they are and you have a warm, happy, affectionate relationship. That's one. I'm going to talk about coaching next because every child is still a child. By definition, every child will exhibit childish behavior. And what does that mean? Sometimes it means they don't know the right way to do things. They don't know that they, put their feet up on the chair or the couch when they visit their grandmother. But sometimes they know and they do it anyway. And that would drive a parent crazy, right? So why are they doing that? Well, they're doing it because they have some unmet need. In this case, maybe they didn't get to run around outside today and they're very active because that's how children are. They need to be physical. They need to run around. They need to be outside. So maybe that's the need that's unmet. Or sometimes there's some feelings that they need some help with. Maybe they're very angry. Maybe they're angry because someone said no to them. And it might even be that you said no for a good reason. No more treats now. It's too close to dinner. It might be a good reason, but you said no and they're angry at you. So they're trying to show you how angry they are. So they purposely put their foot on their grandmother's chair, right? Which of course would make you crazy. But what they need help with there is the feelings. They need help to say to you, I'm so disappointed. I wish I could have more treats. I'm really hungry, right? Instead of saying, I'm mad and I'm going to show you. So when we help children with their feelings, they become able to articulate those feelings. They don't have to act them out by misbehaving, right? And they also, their feelings are more under their conscious control. they're more able to regulate themselves and stop themselves from doing things that they want to do. We all feel like doing things we shouldn't do, that we know better. As adults, we have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. And even then, we can't always control ourselves very well. But children, their prefrontal cortex is still developing until age 25, at least age 25. So we know they can't think ahead. They don't realize the chair will get dirty. They don't realize their grandmother will feel offended. They need some help from us to guide them, but they also need some help from us for those feelings so they can manage the feelings appropriately. So that's coaching the child. Because if you just punish them for putting their foot on her couch or her chair, then they aren't getting help with the feelings. So they're still going to be misbehaving, right? Even if they do something else, like throw their food on the floor when they finally get it, they'll still be misbehaving. So we need to help them with the feelings. And now I'm going to circle around to the first thing. Her parents' ability to regulate their own emotions, because you can see that you can't do these other two things, connection and coaching. You can't do them unless you can self-regulate. It's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. The child purposely puts their foot on their grandmother's chair and you just want to smack them. Really, most parents are just like, no, you know better than that. You're embarrassed. Your mother-in-law is looking at you. You know your child just did the wrong thing. You're embarrassed. It's very hard to self-regulate. But when we can self-regulate, we learn that we're much better at coaching our children. And also, it's the only way to connect with them. When we're yelling, when we're shouting at the child, if we're smacking the child, they're not connecting with us. So they're not open to our guidance, to our influence. So those are the three big ideas. And these are not just my ideas. These are based in the research. The research shows that we have no influence without connection. The research shows that when children are emotion coached, they are better able to self-regulate and cooperate. And the research shows that parents can't do these things without some work on themselves, without learning to regulate their own emotions.
So I just want to take a minute and talk about the key takeaways. You've heard them throughout, right? You've heard them throughout this presentation. This notion of being able to regulate emotions and to stay calm, even when it feels impossible, is really important. This notion of attachment or connecting with your child, even when it's hard, is so important. And we're going to talk in a minute about coaching your child and not controlling them. These are all really critical skills. There's no class in how to be a parent. I wish there should be a PhD in parenting. We all need more support and help. Thank goodness that you guys are here, part of this training, because it is hard work. And we do not give parents enough credit for the amount of work it takes, particularly if you have a child with a disability, to manage that. You have 3 million roles to do as a parent of a child with a disability. You're their advocate, you're their teacher, you're their loving parent, you're the cook, you're the driver, you're all these things. And so there's a lot of pressure on you to be the best you can be. And that's hard. So there's a reason flight attendants say to put on your oxygen first. You have to take care of yourself in order to take care of other people. You need to address your physical needs, your intellectual needs, your emotional needs, and your spiritual needs in order for you to be the best parent you can be. And so there's a wide range of things you can do. You can do exercise, you can sleep, you can eat healthy, you can get cuddles and hugs from loved ones, you can drink tea or some delicious drink that makes you feel good, take baths, showers, and massages. You can have time with friends, alone time, all of these things that you're seeing pop up on the screen. These are things that you can do to take care of yourself, because often as parents, particularly parents of children with disabilities, our entire lives get absorbed by our kids. And we don't take enough time to take a break to take care of ourselves. Respite care is there for a reason. You need to be able to have a minute to take a deep breath, to do some self-care in order to be yourself, your best self. So I'm just asking you to reflect as you listen. What is one thing that you do for yourself? You can answer in the chat if you like, or you can just reflect independently. What is one thing you wish you could do more often for yourself? What is one thing you want to do that you feel you can't do? And who is someone who could help you figure out how to do that one thing? And I am not going to spend a lot of time on it because I want to get into coaching, but I want you to embrace this slide. If nothing else from today, I want you to take care of yourself, because then when your child is acting out and you're trying to figure out what to do, you'll be better able to slow down and not have that emotional reaction yourself, but to be able to handle it with some grace because you have given yourself grace. Okay. Okay. So how do we become a child behavior detective and coach? Understanding may require some detective work. And what you need to know to understand is, what is your child communicating and why are they communicating it in the way that they are? So there's a couple strategies that we'll go over before the session is over. I want to point you to this resource. It is, I think, one of the handouts for today. I'm also going to put it in the chat right now so that you can get the links. But so, oh, I love that. Thank you, Lisa. She texts articles she wants to read, and then she reads them during her morning coffee. I personally, I read for 20 minutes on my phone every morning after. That's how I wake up in the morning. It's how I do my self-care. It's so important to do something like that. Just to do something for you is really critical. So in this workbook, there are a lot of different resources for you, but one of them, let me see if I can show it to you, is a worksheet that will help you try to understand the behavior of your child. Now at school, they call this an ABC chart. A stands for antecedent, what happened before. B is the behavior itself, what happened. And C is consequence, so what happened after, how did it end? And so these are some really quick checklists. You can process this in your head, but if you do it with a tool like this, if you start doing it with a tool like this for a while, it will seep into your routines and the way you think, and it will help you respond and understand your child's behavior better. And so the questions after the, what were the behaviors, how often did it happen, and how long did it last? And because how many times and how long are important. What happened before and what happened after. And then some questions to help you think about why you think your child is using the behavior and what they're trying to tell you. And this worksheet is a great way for you to start processing what it is the behavior is about. So what happened before, what happened after, why do you think your child was using this behavior? And why do you think your child, what do you think your child is trying to tell you? So let's keep those questions in mind and let's watch this video.
Look, I bring him a ladder. Wow. No, it's not a trap. It's called a ladder. No, don't have. Well, I need one. No, they are not.
Okay, You've never seen that before, I'm sure. Okay, so what happened? There was a boy on top of a girl pulling hair and wrestling. What happened before? Before we saw them playing with the toy, the boy clearly wanted to use the toy in a very specific way. What happened after? We didn't see what happened after, but my guess is that the little girl screamed and tried to push him off of her and that they wrestled. So why do you think your child was using this behavior? He didn't like the way things were going. He wanted the story to go a specific way, and the other child was changing the story. He wasn't able to adapt to that. So when we think about temperament, perhaps he is more resistant to change. When we think about intensity, maybe this is a kid who's really exuberant. He jumped right on her to wrestle. Maybe this is a child who is a high energy kid who is also very structured in how he likes things to go. He likes to be in control. And so in this situation, he's saying this child, I am not ready for this other child to change the story in the game that I'm playing. And so he needs another way of expressing that. Let's watch another one and do the same thing.
All right. Let's go now. Play with some balls. You need to get you some balls.
Thank you.
Ryan, do you need help? You need help? You need help? 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 Let's put our shirt back on, okay? There we go. Would you like to have a ball? Would you like to have a ball? Huh? What would you like? You want me to have a ball? What? Oh, nice God. Nice God.
Okay, again, what happened? Well, he started self-stimming, right? He started pulling off his shirt. He started hitting his head. He started wrestling around. What happened before? A teacher led him over to a space all by himself. He was all alone. And what happened after, when another teacher came to come and sign using the word help and asked if he wanted help, he reached for her and asked for a hug. So why do you think the child was using this behavior? He was trying to get somebody's attention because he probably wanted a hug. He probably wanted some relationship with somebody else. And so that was what he was trying to tell us. He was trying to tell us that he didn't want to be off on his own. He wanted some nurturing. He wanted some support. And so you can see how a tool like this might help you decipher a little bit of what's going on with your children's behavior. So once you know what's going on, how do you coach them to do something differently? There is a really important difference between discipline and punishment. So discipline is this notion that we're teaching our children the behaviors that we hope, and we teach them with consistency and love. It results in self-control, it results in cooperation, and it results in a self-confidence. Punishment, on the other hand, is when we say we're going to take things away, or we're going to put them in a timeout chair, or we're going to do something that makes them feel like they're powerless. And I mentioned the timeout chair. I will say to you, there is a difference between the timeout chair, which feels punitive, and teaching children how to take a break. So there is nothing wrong with setting limits for a child when they're out of control and saying, you are too out of control to be around other people right now. You need to take a break, and giving them space to work out their emotions. That is different than the timeout chair. It's very controversial. So the timeout chair is when we are angry with them and we say, you need to sit in the timeout chair and sit and think about what you've done. But we give them no structure or support in working through all of the motions. They're here, and we've given them nothing to do this. We've given them nothing to come in the fist, if you're looking at my picture. We've given them nothing to calm back down, to control those feelings of fight or flight or freeze. So the difference is really that the timeout chair doesn't give them that, whereas teaching them how to take a break and giving them time it provides that structure that allows them to separate and respond to their own emotions and calm down. So you see the difference in that example between discipline and punishment. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Bruce Perry because he really resonates with this brain science that we're talking about, and this understanding that we need to help regulate and calm down children. Then we need to connect with them and attach to them in order to be able to reason and teach them a new way of thinking. So I'm running low on time, so I'm going to buzz through. So the first strategy I want you to think about is logical consequences. And logical consequences are a powerful way of responding to children's behavior. It's teaching them, if you do this, then that will happen. Helpful questions when you're considering logical consequences include, is a consequence applied? Does it match the situation? Does it make sense? Can you be consistent with it? And does it teach the child acceptable behavior? So let's try it out. So here's Juan. Juan decides to make his own breakfast. Unfortunately, the milk carton was too heavy for him. So when he reached for the milk, it spilled all over the table and the cabinets below. So I'm going to launch this quiz. What is a logical consequence? So should they remain calm and should you remain calm and remind yourself your child had good intentions? Should you praise Juan for his developing independence and desire to help? Should you work with Juan to clean up the mess and promise to help him develop the skills and steps necessary to prepare his own breakfast going forward? Or all of the above? All of the above. I agree. That's exactly right. And these are all logical consequences. Okay. So that's what you said. So now let's talk about, I'm going to put the polls over here, modeling behaviors. So children may need to see or experience the behaviors you expect. You can't just assume that they're going to know what you mean. You have to show them. You have to show them what you mean instead of just saying it. So some questions that you may want to think about when you're modeling behaviors is, how would my child do this task? What can I do to make it easier for them to understand? How do I need to show them what I expect? So do I need to get down on their level? Do I need to bring them into an environment that really shows them the expectation? And how can I make it fun for both of us? So how can I do it in a way that feels like a game or feels nurturing and loving? So let's try it out. So here's Sarah. Sarah makes a mess every time she plays with Play-Doh. She never helps to clean up her messes, and she always has a temper tantrum when it's time to connect. So let's see. Stop sharing. Sorry. Let's do this poll. So modeling your expectation includes cleaning the Play-Doh and the toys with her, showing her where to store the toys, and engaging her by singing a cleanup song or making cleanup into a game, or all of the above. What would you choose? All of the above. I see all of the above. So let me share the results. Yep. So in that way, you're making it fun. You're being very clear about what your intentions are, and you are making it easy for her by engaging with her in this nurturing, loving way. Okay. Now let's do one more coaching strategy. So what does it mean to get rid? So getting rid of distractions and rewards are really important, especially when you're rewarding negative behaviors that you're trying to get rid of. You may not even realize that you're doing it. Children often get distracted or gain rewards with certain behaviors, and they'll continue to do the same thing until you remove those rewards or those distractions. And so you should be thinking about, what benefit is my child gaining? What would make my child want to do something differently? How can I remove or replace that distraction or reward? And how does our relationship need to change? Because sometimes it is that dynamic between parent and child to remove the distraction or reward. So let's do it again. Juliet always needs a drink of water right before bed. At first, you thought she was really thirsty, and then you realized that she's just wants attention. So when you try to say no, she cries and whines. Sometimes she'll get out of bed and follow you around the house until you give her water, and she'll do it multiple times. So how do you get rid of the reward or distraction to help her go to bed? You might include a drink of water in the bedtime routine so that it's part of the schedule. You might place a water bottle next to her bed so she can help herself. And you may ask her to choose something or soothe her like a special snuggly music or a book she can take to bed. That's exactly right. All of the above. All of the above is definitely the answer here. You've done all the things you need to do to coach her into the right way. Okay, so these are just 3 strategies. There's lots more. I would like just sort of emphasize the power of ignoring. Sometimes just ignoring the behaviors is all you need to do. When we pay attention to them, that is a subtle way of rewarding those behaviors. And so we want to make sure we're not doing that. So as we sum up today, I want you to leave thinking about some of the strategies you use to coach your child, because you coach your child every day. And when do you use those strategies? How do they form your parenting style, and how do they support your child? And then I have time for a question, or I have 1 minute for a question, but I don't think we have any questions. What I do want to share with you is that I have another session on April 28th at 6:30. It's a Thursday. And this is the second part of this session. And it is about how to use what you know about your child to work with the other professionals in their lives. And so you know your kid best. I'm just going to give you some strategies for how to use that information and share it with the other professionals in your family's life. And that's it. That's it for me. Thank you so much for attending today. This is my family almost now. If you ever have any questions or need anything from me, you can reach me at the email address on the slide. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. We appreciate it. And for those that have attended, we're going to be sending out an email with all of the links from the chat and a link to the recording once it is posted. And so we hope to see you at additional sessions.
Thanks so much.